I never knew how to wrap the tape and the towel around my faucet.
Yes.
Until I had to have content.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Hi, everybody. Salma Manzer with 12 Rivers Realty, and I'm here with Joey Adams with Allstate Insurance. Joey, thank you for coming and meeting with me.
Thank you so much, Salma. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. The reason why I am wanting to talk to you more is because I know that this year in particular, insurance policies have been changing from state to state,
Yes.
and it's going to have a big impact, like more of an impact than people may think. With what's happening with the insurance world and the changes, not what has been, I mean, it's happening. It's happened.
Yeah.
So what am I talking about here? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I mean, first off, I mean, we could just look at our own insurance, right, as consumers. Even before we start talking to our clients, I mean, we see it. I mean, obviously, the first thing that sounds out to us is our rates.
Right.
Right. I mean, essentially, when that storm of 2021, the freeze, I've seen nothing but like a domino effect since that storm with property insurance, to where I literally did a review yesterday with a client who's been with me for 2 full years, getting ready to renew from year 3, and her insurance has essentially increased by 100% in 2 years.
Okay.
And it just so happens that that's the formula that I'm sharing with clients who are current homeowners and even the new home buyer, just to make them aware of like where insurance is at from a rates perspective.
Okay, so we are talking about insurance rates here, okay? You have to have an insurance on a home in order for a bank to give you a loan. Do you have to have insurance on a home if I pay cash?
Technically, no.
Okay.
You own that asset. It does not belong to the bank.
Okay.
So you essentially can do whatever you want with it.
Okay.
Now,
in the history of your life and insurance, have you ever had a cash buyer not acquire insurance? And what does that mean for somebody?
No. For the most part, usually with cash buyers, I mean, it really just depends on, I guess, how they do business. I've had some people that don't think about getting the policy until after they've closed. I have other people who they work quick to where they want to make sure that policy's in place on the day that they're supposed to sign.
Right.
I have others that waited a couple of weeks, before they got a policy because they just really didn't think about it.
Okay, but I just wanted to bring up the fact that if you have all the money in the world, or if you have enough money to buy a house, then you might not be burdened with having to get a high cost insurance for your home. It would be dumb. If anything happens, you're not going to get covered. Or maybe it wouldn't be dumb. There are people in the world who choose not to have health insurance, right?
Correct.
And there are people in the world that can't afford it. So back to home ownership and insurance for homes. You said specifically that it went up 100% or 200%?
100%.
100%, okay?
On average, yeah.
On average. But this is an important topic because it does relate to affordability, okay? I want to reiterate that the reason I want to talk about it is because it's important for homeowners to know that their monthly or yearly is going up in order to be able to buy homes. And the point I'm making is that most people are getting a loan and the bank is going to require that you have insurance. So you're going to be paying it no matter what if you're going to be buying a home.
Correct.
And if you think you're a renter and this is not going to apply to you, guess what? Those rent rates are going to go up because that landlord is going to have insurance, okay? And so just to back up, to make sure that everybody understands what I'm talking about, we're talking about insurance on a home. And I think, tell me if you think the same or what you think, that the reason this is happening is because with all the different weather with all the extreme weather that we've been having in forget the last 3 years, even 5 years, floods, Harvey. I'm talking about federal, okay, nationally, not just in Texas. But with all the weather that's been changing and the cause and effect that's been happening, insurance companies have been having to pay out way more than they ever thought, correct?
Correct.
In years, like historically, paying out.
Absolutely.
Floods, fires, hurricanes, storms. These are natural disasters that would have normally been covered and not affected the homeowner.
Correct.
Like imagine like a credit score card, right? And your credit score relates your health on how you can get insurance. Well, now that qualifying score is on the home buyer as well as on the home, if I'm understanding it correctly. And it applies to natural disasters as well, not just to your pipe breaking and it causing a flood in your home because of a malfunction, but also like hail, that's a natural disaster, flood, that's a natural disaster, wind and fire. Okay, so right, insurance companies are no longer covering these natural disasters like they were before. Prices have gone up because of them, and it's a knock against you and the house if there's been a claim or if you as a homeowner have filed a claim.
Yeah, all of those contributing factors will play a part. And I think the one thing is, and this is something that my agent and I discussed, and that is it's really important for the consumers and the clients to like specifically talk to either who their current provider is, okay, or if they're in the market of looking for a new insurance provider, because they can't get answers for the current situation.
Right.
They need to figure out what specific guidelines, underwriting restrictions, and things like that does that company have in place. Like I can speak 100% about what Allstate does, or the broker companies that Allstate does business with when we can't write a policy with Allstate. But you're right, because of the increased amount of natural disasters, not just Texas, but just the nation. I mean, you turn on the TV and you either see an insurance commercial or you see a lawyer's commercial, because lawsuits are up too. So all of these things play factors in our rates. And once again, you made a good point. Like once you have one of those disasters hit, say for example, you're paying $2,000 a year for a home insurance premium. You just had the insurance company pay for a $25,000 roof. You've been with that company for less than a year. It's going to take another decade of renewals to pay for their one roof. Now, I guess times that by thousands. Right. You know, and not just one storm. I mean, since April, I literally have gotten a catastrophic email from the Texas Department of Insurance deeming that the last hailstorm was a cat claim. And guess what? That is happening like every week now. So I'm just like, okay, so now we've had literally 6 straight weeks of a cat claim through the whole Texas.
What's cat claim again?
It's deemed a catastrophic loss through the Texas Department of Insurance. So what that means is that there has been so many amounts of claims filed through these insurance entities that it gets reported to the Texas Department of Insurance.
As a catastrophic level.
Correct. So, for example, the ones that took place back in September, which was pretty big, if I'm not mistaken, that ended up being over $3 billion for the state of Texas in essentially wind and hail claims for just that 1 hour storm. Right. Well, we've had, 8 storms since then, I think. We may not have gotten the cold weather this year, but we've definitely had a lot more hail and wind this year. And I'm sure that after the downpour last night, even though I did not see hail where I live, I'm sure somebody in the state got hail during that storm.
I don't know if I saw hail, but I felt and heard the sideways wind.
Yes.
You know, against the window of my house, really.
I actually woke up this morning, went to the gym, and literally one of my shrubs in the front yard was split in half from the downpour. Right. So
I want to point out that the reason that it is so shocking to us as professional individuals to see this number go up is because, and it's all perspective, it's because it's a 100% increase. But to be fair, in the 17 years that I have been in real estate, insurance numbers, I mean, I don't know anything about how your numbers work, and I know less about how insurance numbers work than I do about lending, and I feel like lending is even more complicated to some degree. But because the reason I don't know much about insurance numbers and the price increases that have happened is because they don't happen. In 17 years that I have been in real estate, there has not been a huge, the insurance number is never, I can always guesstimate whether it's a $1 million home or a 300,000 condo. I'm like, estimate about $1,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's always been my thing. Estimate about 1,500, but it's never. And so, of course, with all the natural disasters and the payouts, of course, the numbers are going to go up. And unfortunately for the consumer, it's a drastic difference because it has not gone up in many years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, it all happened pretty much all at once. Right. And we kind of started seeing it with auto insurance. Right. That was kind of the first line of insurance that we really saw start happening.
I thought my insurance was going up because I was a bad driver.
Yeah, well, that also can have a reflection for sure. And we do live in the worst city in the state of Texas for auto. So that we're also living on a more magnified scale with that. But when it comes to the property insurance, I mean, it used to be you could just throw out the generalized quote, for, anywhere from $900 to $1,300 a year, about $100, $110 a month. Well, the mentality of having the $100 a month insurance policy, that's, in my opinion, that's like gone. That's kind of a dream. Right. Where some people get it, but there's a lot of contributing factors to that type of rate.
Okay.
So it does still exist. But once again, it's going to come down to the person itself. It's going to come down to their credit. It's going to come down to their insurance history. It's going to come down to the home itself.
Right.
So yeah, there's just so many different factors that play with like our rates. Right. That's why it's so hard to throw out the hypothetical numbers. The one thing I tell like my referral partners and things like that to do is, if you can, try to like not talk about the insurance number, because we really don't know, especially if we find out that they've had like multiple claim type situations.
Right, and that's what I was going to get into next.
Whether they were paid or not. So there's so many different factors. That's why having an agent, having somebody you can actually talk to and go to, and then of course having your clients kind of get an early start of looking into this. And
that's going to lead me to my next question. Leading the witness. Thank you very much. Making it easy.
Sure.
Because two things. I don't want to call this doomsday in the sense that like, oh my God, homes are going to be so unaffordable. People are not going to be able to afford it. But it has gone up, but it's just going to be another cost. Kind of like an HOA, you know what I mean? Like instead of $200 a month, maybe it'll be $400, if it's 100% increase. And maybe you don't get, your dog food delivered monthly anymore. I mean, you know what I mean? There's ways, right?
Absolutely.
To move the numbers for it to work, or you just pay it because it's part of home ownership. And I'm telling you, it's also going to be part of renting, because if you renters don't think that you're not paying for it, you're absolutely paying for it. You're just not gaining any of the benefits, which is the tax reductions on insurance, on the rate. So all the things that you're like, oh, I don't want to pay that much for. We people that are paying it are also reducing other stuff that is making the net better. I mean, I don't know how much better to explain that, but this is not all doomsday. Yeah. So two-part question, or two-angled question here is, number one, what can a consumer do knowing that this is happening? And what can the real estate agent do to better prepare their buyer? I know that something that I've started implementing with my clients is, oh my God, we're looking at homes. We saw the 5. You've narrowed down to the 1. You like it. We've negotiated. We made the offers. While I'm negotiating and making the offers, while I'm pulling the sales disclosures, the title, the T47, and getting all that to my client, while I'm pulling what I can, I'm calling you. I'm saying, hey, can you do a history test on the property that we are interested in? Have there been any major claims? Because if that seller took a claim on that house and ended up pocketing the money and not fixing the roof, or let's say that they're an outstanding citizen, they took out the claim and they fixed the roof, it's still going to be a cross against my client. If there's a flood and if there's hail, they're not going to be able to get a repair maybe, or they're not going to want to, because they're not going to want to have another X against them personally or another one against the house. So how do we... If I find a house that my client loves and there's insurance claims on it, do I tell her, hell no, we won't go? Or, okay, wait, what's your recommendation there?
Yeah, I mean, the first off is just get the clue report / loss history report.
Yep.
Okay.
Clue report or loss history report.
Correct. And
on the house.
And any insurance person who's willing to help obviously should be able to get that for you like in a matter of minutes.
Right.
Now, once again, that's also kind of one of those 50-50 questions to where you were saying like this can have a negative impact. Well, obviously in the eyes of like Allstate, any losses on a home that the new buyers are looking at, those previous losses technically can be removed or expunged and will not carry any impact on the new buyer or your client.
Okay. Is that new? Because I thought it was 2 of the 5. Or...
That's just Allstate. That's why it's so important to contact, if you're looking to do business with your current provider or you're looking to do business with new providers, you have to ask the questions of what are their underwriting restrictions, because I can't even tell you the companies of when this happened, but I can just tell you situations to where I had some clients who were buying a brand new home, or not a brand new home, but a new home for them.
Of course, resale.
And first-time home buyers, been with their current insurance provider for like 8 years. They've had renters and auto insurance with them. Went to go get a home quote like they normally would with their provider, and they were declined coverage or rejected coverage because that property that they're looking to buy had to water loss claims. So that specific company would not take on that risk. Well, I quoted them with Allstate. I saw the water damage claims. I know that those weren't theirs, that they were the sellers of the previous owners, and so I can remove those. Okay, get them a quote. Doesn't affect their rate, and I was able to bind or do business with them. Okay. There's other situations to where I have people who told me that they've been with their provider for many, many years, buying a new home, and they were told in November that their company was no longer taking on new business.
Right.
So that was something that I heard. And then there's, of course, people who were being sent non-renewals, okay, for the current homeowners.
Right, you guys. So people who have been paying on their home insurance because of all these changes are getting notices and letters from their insurance provider saying, hey, in February, and we're supposed to do to renew, we're not interested. We're not renewing.
Yes.
And then what are those people are left to do because they still have a mortgage?
Yeah. And you're right. And the funny thing is that I guess that's when they finally get the urgency to call and find out, right?
Right.
Instead of like kind of taking the initiative. I think it's the one thing we're trying to do is build education, build rapport, build initiative. Like, you have to ask these questions. You have to find out what's going on, because all of a sudden you're going to get this letter, and you won't know why, and it could be several different reasons. It's just, like I said, it's company specific of what's going on with your house or you as insureds, that they're no longer going to, insure your business.
Right.
So, and that's, the one thing is we are very fortunate in Texas. We were talking about this kind of become a national thing because there are several states you can't get a home policy in right now. You can't. Or if you do, you're paying thousands and thousands of dollars in premium for what would be considered like your cookie cutter 1,500 square foot home. You know what I mean? Right. And so we are fortunate enough that we could still do that. Texas is technically insurance friendly, even though our rates wouldn't tell us that. But we are able to still insure our assets, at least at this time.
So what do you recommend for those buyers looking? What should they... How should they better prepare themselves, knowing that they're going to buy a home, being in that home ownership, knowing that they're going to have insurance for the life of their loan? How would they approach looking a house or, the next steps of moving forward with a house? Sure.
I think is find somebody that is going to handle your insurance that you actually have a good relationship with, somebody that that, and this is all, of course, everyone I guess I almost feel like people work harder in the initial conversation to earn the business, but the service kind of goes away, especially in the insurance world. And that's just feedback that I get from people who I now take care of, and they tell me how it was with their previous provider, right? So find somebody that has an agent, or if you're going to be working with like 1-800 companies, okay, you got to try to find somebody that you can get a direct contact with if it's possible. Right. That way, if anything comes up, you have someone that you can go to as a reference and explain a certain situation to you. But I can't stress enough, I'm big on agents. Like, you find a company that deals with agencies still. Whoever
instead of like calling or online.
Correct. We call them 1-800 just for the fact that, like, we all know traditionally that the 1-800, has always, I guess, been the better rated type businesses. Right. But if you've ever had to use your insurance with those type of companies, it's like crickets. Right. It's really hard to get anybody to help you. You're not talking to the same person every time. Yeah. You don't have somebody calling you to see who's taking care of you. So there's so many things.
Just to be clear, when Joey's referring to an agent, he's meaning an insurance agent.
Yes.
Knowing that the insurance companies are raising their rates unexpectedly, but not surprisingly, looking back at what they've been charging, unexpectedly, but not surprising, looking at the weather patterns. Knowing that this is happening, how does a home buyer move forward, buying the insurance, paying for it, they're in the home? How do they mitigate future issues, costs, fears?
Yes. I would do an annual review of your roof. Okay, obviously you can pretty much have any roofing company come out there and take a look at the roof. You can yourself climb up there once a year or after the most recent storm. Yeah,
But just to be clear, you can hire everyone, or you can call one of us and we can get you up there with somebody that we break bread with regularly.
Yes, we all have resources. That's for sure.
But we all do have resources.
Yes.
We can Google, but that's like my whole point.
Yeah.
Like, work with whoever you want. But hopefully you're working with somebody that not only knows the information, but cares about you.
Exactly.
And that information.
Exactly.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is when I talk to the clients about when they're getting their home policy, you got to look at it from a catastrophic perspective. So be prepared. You're going to have things come up as a homeowner. Welcome to investment. Welcome to protecting your assets. So what do you got to do? You got to do things to protect it. Okay. You have to, even if you have what would be considered a low insurance deductible, doesn't mean that you go to your policy immediately. It's not home warranty.
Right.
We got to look at these from like a catastrophic perspective.
Okay. So we're looking at the roof.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at major trees around the house and making sure they're cut and trimmed and away.
Correct.
What else are we looking at?
You want to make sure the gutters are cleaned. You don't want to have anything growing up too close to the house. Like, for example, I have like a 100-year oak that's like 5 feet away from my home. And last year's freeze, all those limbs that were hanging over my roof fell after they snapped. Obviously, there was nothing major, no issues, but I had to have an arborist come out there, trim them all back to where now it's probably going to take another 30, 40 years for any of those limbs to come back. So
you're mitigating the risk.
Correct. And obviously, if I would have done a better job, I would have saw that sooner and had it taken care of before, obviously, something happened. But that's kind of how it happens, right? We get triggered to do something because we've now encountered
I never knew how to wrap the tape and the towel around my faucet.
Yes.
Until I had to have content.
Yes, exactly. Yes, my wife is real big on covering the faucets once the first 30-degree day hits. She sends me out there immediately. Even if the next day is 80 degrees, I'm covering the faucets on the first 30.
Well, what else? What else?
Making sure that just your home is in working order. Mm-hmm. You know how like we talked about how we have to service our cars, right? Yeah. Well, we do have to service our homes. You know, there's little things that are going to come up.
Right. If you're on top of the AC, then you're going to have less leakage. If you're going to, if you're looking at the plumbing, you know, like you can take more ownership of your home.
Correct.
You can pay attention, just like we can take care of our own health, just like we can really look into it, and kind of that's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, you know, a lot of times, it really just depends on, we want to be preventative, right? Because we want to look at our insurance policy as like a worst case situation, not an immediate solution.
Right.
Okay. So, and that's why the one thing I always try to address to my clients is that we're to a point now to where it almost feels like we're almost self-insuring. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is we're going to probably pay more out of pocket for things that go wrong with our home.
Right.
Or things that we could foresee possibly happening. Right. And what does that look like? Well, did we buy a home that the roof did pass inspection, whether it was the pre-inspection, whether it was the insurance inspection, but yet it's still 10 or 12 years old? Right. So are we going to have to budget and plan for maybe a new roof in the next 3 to 5 years? Because really doesn't matter. In Texas, what I've learned is that even if we have these 30-year, 40-year high-resistant wind-shingled roofs, you got to cut that life expectancy in half. Right. So your 20-year roof is 10 years. Your 30-year roof is 15, and your 40-year roof is 20. Yep. So there's so many different things that I've learned doing insurance just in this state. You know, that's quite a bit different than other states, you know.
And again, like, it sounds like we're overgeneralizing it, but because like I know the process of the transaction, like you're absolutely right. To give you an example, if you're a home buyer and you fall in love with a home and you want the home, so we look at the numbers and it's priced according to market. And so you feel good about your deal. And the seller is like, great, you feel good. This was the price. We're agreeing to it. You do an inspection and the roof looks like it's going to it might need to be replaced in the 2 to 5 years, maybe, but it currently is working in great order. Well, then I'm going to have to really like convince that agent on the other side of it to talk to their seller to be like, hey, even though this roof is in perfectly good order now, the implications of having to change it in 2 to 5 years is no longer just the cost of the roof. Like I may or may not be able to get a claim. And if I choose to, it may cost me more in the future. You know what I mean? So there is more implications. And if you can't afford it or it doesn't work out, then there is the added risk of the loan. Like that's the part that kind of like, you know, okay, what about, this is my last question. What about the homeowner who has been paying insurance and has been paying that $1,000 a year, and all of a sudden it's gone up and they need a new roof and it's not getting
it's not getting
covered, okay? Or whatever. Let's just say that something happens where the price goes up for whatever reason, because of the insurance amount or because something needed to be fixed, and the homeowner can't afford it. And it's time to renew. What does happen with that loan?
Well, the loan will stay in. Nothing should happen to the loan unless something happens to the insurance policy, I guess. And the loan, I think, will still be in place, but you may have to go find insurance elsewhere. Okay, I think the one thing is that you may be put in a situation to where you're just going to have to try to resolve that roof situation.
Right.
Okay. Or
between buyer and seller.
Yeah, something like that. And the big thing that we've really tried to, and this is something that my agent and I have discussed a lot, and this is why, like, when we're working with realtors and things like that firsthand, because we do have so many good relationship with the realtors, and the process now for like insurance and things like that is getting started much earlier in the process, to where the roof is now looked upon in Texas as just as important as the home structure.
Okay.
And not only that, insurance companies are investing even more money in pre-inspection. So even though we get a policy put in place for you, 30 days later, we may get an email from Allstate Underwriting or whoever the insurance provider is. You may get an email stating, and a call from your insurance provider stating, like, okay, so you have limbs touching your limbs touching your
based on the
base
condition
conditions.
of the homes.
Correct.
Where it's going to have to be more insurance.
Yes, or the roof.
Right.
The roof is huge. That's like 75% of the inspection right now.
Right.
So, and even if the roof passed your pre-inspection, doesn't mean it's going to pass an insurance inspection.
Okay.
And that's why having a good conversation with your insurance provider before, like being transparent, be like, hey, so here's what the roof is. It's 10 or 12 years old.
Right.
The roofer says that there's maybe a good 2 or 3 years left. The sellers aren't willing to move on the roof. They're not willing to make any type of repairs. What will happen if my home gets inspected and I fail? Well, if it's a roof situation, what they're going to want is they may not necessarily require you to do a full roof replacement, but they're going to send pictures of the areas that have the most concern or present the most foreseen hazard.
Right.
And you're going to have to do repairs on those certain areas. You'll then have to provide some type of documentation stating that the repairs have been done, and then you can file for reinstatement for your insurance. And once again, comes down to company specifics, right?
Okay.
What is that company? How much time do they give you? Are they only going to give you a week? Are they going to give you 60 days? So that's why that initial conversation is so important.
Because that timeline, you need to weave it into the contract as far as closing is concerned.
Correct.
And timelines and families moving and all of that.
Yeah.
But okay, so what I'm learning is that with all the change is hard, change is different, but it doesn't have to be scary.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look at the whole picture and plug and play, just like rates, just like timing of a home, just like just like all of it in real estate is what you're saying.
Yes.
It's a matter of conversation, transparency, and figuring it out.
Correct. Yeah. Having and setting an expectation, I think, too. Because certain processes or certain, contracts, things like that are much easier than others, right? But having more information, that's why the initial conversation, like with my clients, the first thing I ask them now, I didn't used to have to ask them about the prior loss situation.
Right.
But now it's like I have to ask because if you've had more than the one loss, I have to immediately go to a different company, and that essentially removes Allstate from the picture, at least until that loss falls off.
Got it.
So, which unfortunately that's happened a lot since Allstate has put in that underwriting restriction. And like I said, that's just an Allstate thing. Other companies have more strict policies. They may have different policies. So you just have to ask questions, and we have to pay attention now. Right. We used to not have to really pay attention to our insurance. It seems like we kind of like watched to see what we were paying, but we never really had to really look to see like what's covered, what do I do in this type of situation. Okay, so I had this type of example, I had example A show up, so what happens if something happens. So there's so much, and it's always changing. That's the thing now. Like I've been doing it now for almost 4 years, and insurance looks completely different from 2020 now it does in 2024. Completely different.
Well, that's why I wanted to talk to you about all this, because it is changing. It is something that we're all going to have to start being aware of if you're not already aware of it. Again, it doesn't have to be scary, and you don't have to know it all. I don't expect myself to know it all, but I am always curious. It is something that affects me, my business, my personal investments, my clients, my family, and not just on the personal residential side, on the commercial side. I mean, this is affecting everyone. And so I don't know. Just thank you for giving us all this information.
Yeah,
it was a lot.
absolutely.
Hopefully people got some of it. And if you have more questions, always reach out to us. All of Joey's information will be included here below. And thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Selma.